So we will open the meeting. I need call to order. I need a motion to adopt the agenda for today.
Motion to adopt. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. We also need the approval of our minutes from December 6th board meeting. I hope you had a chance to look through those.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Anything that needs to be changed or comments? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Chair votes aye as well. Okay. So the next thing is, this is an opportunity for the public to comment on any public matter that is not on the agenda of the meeting and is within the jurisdiction of the Teachers Retirement Board. However, the board may not take action on any issues raised unless it's included on the agenda and public comment has been allowed. If issues are raised that would require board action, the issue would need to be included on the agenda for a future meeting. Public matter does not include disability applications or contested cases and other adjudicative proceedings. We have one public and he's part of the meetings. Oh, we do have.
There's a couple online, yep.
Okay. We do have a couple of public members online. Would you like to say anything? All right, thank you. So we are to our BOI annual report with Dan Booyah.
Good morning. Can you pull up the thingy, Sean? All right, I'm trying to become a model of efficiency, so I did one report for both systems, and we'll see how this runs for the first year. So Madam Chair, for your records, I'm Dan Bill. I'm the Executive Director of your Board of Investments. Good to see everybody again. I am obligated under 176320 to come talk to you every year, but it's also more of a joy. As Director Graham found out last meeting at BOI, he and Director Holohan came over, joined us for lunch. He took some Tupperware of leftovers with him, so we had no waste at BOI. As I've mentioned before, the most important decision the board makes is the strategic asset allocation. That is the driver of returns, and that is what really does realize our performance over the long haul. There's tactical and style selections that we can make, but we're not big on timing the market. Doesn't seem to work out very well when you do, as well as manager selection, and I'll touch on manager selection maybe a little bit at the end when we look at what's coming this legislative session in the future. From the strategic asset allocation, the board did cut one from domestic equities and add one to private investments, so our midpoints moved up a little bit. In private investments, we've had a great run in the public markets over the last several years. We have some room to add some liquidity. As you'll remember, from a capital market assumption perspective, private investments is a little bit better return than domestic equities. We don't have a liquidity issue within any of the pension systems. CAP is, the funded ratios continue to get better. So we have the opportunity to absorb that J curve. A J curve is when you make an illiquid investment. You sort of have that, you buy it, but you don't start getting the rents for a while. The appreciation of the asset isn't realized, so it kind of dips down, and then you start to see that acceleration in the out years. So we've got some room, and I believe the last Horizon report had private investments around a 10 to 11% expected return. Domestic equities, you can kind of bank on a 7% year over year pretty regularly. So we did that. That's about as far as we're really comfortable going within private investments. As you'll never get a thank you as the retirement system, but everybody who has domestic equities or any of these other portfolios owes you a thank you, particularly the state fund, because they draft off of your and PERS's purchasing power. So when we go to market to start purchasing assets, we do so with a portfolio of $29 billion, 1.4 of which is the state fund, 15 of which is your and PERS's, so they get the benefits of your purchasing power. So You should be getting a muffin basket. Let me know if it shows up. On the next slide, you'll see past and expected performance. As you all know, 9.06 last year. Inception to date, well above that 7.3% target that you set under Article 8, Section 15. Our fiscal year to date, as of last Friday, was 6.27. So good year so far. Everybody knock on wood, cross your fingers. We'll see what happens. There are some headwinds out there. I mean, we're sort of in this weird place, again, where good news is bad news, where the economy's roaring. That means there's not a lot of pressure on rates, but you've got this sort of overhang of inflation is still kind of out there, and then who knows what tariffs do. So it's choppy waters, to use my predecessor's verbiage, but so far 627 looking, like I said, hopefully we'll have another good year. This is that sheet that I believe Mrs. Roast brings you every month. Just sort of an explanation of where we were as of September when I sent these out. Obviously assets have grown, but this gives you a pretty good perspective of where you are relative to we did hit 29 billion at the end of January for the first time, 29.1 billion assets under management. But a lot of that is STIP. We have some, the state has been the recipient of sort of a windfall of income, property, and federal funds. But the other thing that we've seen is organic growth within the STIP portfolio. A lot of local governments, special purpose districts, school districts are starting to join. The rates, we were at about 4.7 the other day, which is relative to what you can get in the private markets is pretty good. And again, dilution is the solution for fee distribution. So the more assets under management we have, the easier it is to reduce those costs on the long term. Investment goals and strategies for a perpetual fund. This has not changed in any of the 5 years I've talked to you, but I'm required to articulate it to you, so here it is being articulated. Next slide. So we are also required to compare ourselves to similar funds in other states. That requirement came into statute in 2013 with the passages of those two, what I'll call fixed bills that came out of the select committee, but the board has sort of taken a different tact on it. We are very happy to be the most audited organization in the state of Montana. So we have an annual legislative audit completed by LAD. We have an annual internal control audit performed by Whipfleet. We have a biannual performance and fee analysis performed by CEM. And this last year, we also brought in a fiduciary review. We wanted to see how we were comparing to best practices across the states, both relative to legislation, law, and case law. So this is one of the slides, basically the high level, this and the other slide illustrate where we're at relative to fees and performance. So you can see our 5-year policy return exceeded our peers in the public space. We're in that, I'll call it right-sized. So we have, with the asset pool of 29 billion, we have the ability to go out and do pretty good purchase blocks. We're looking at $50 to $60 million in any private investment, which is just enough that you can get into some funds that if you're in that 10, 15, 20, you don't get to. We usually get an LPAC seat, that's a limited partner advisory council seat. So that means we get to participate more actively, network a little better, gives us some pretty good mapping, we'll call it, so that we can see what funds are coming up and where there may be other opportunities. We don't buy the big funds, and I think and this is where I want to talk about manager selection. So when you see, I know you guys look at Horizon's capital market assumptions on an annual basis, and we use them. We also use RBKs, they're our investment consultant, but what they don't take into consideration is manager selection. And when you look at our quarterly performance year over year, we're usually in the top decile over the longer term, and part of that is manager selection. Our underwriting process, what we found in the fiduciary review, we exceed even the big boys, the CalPERS, the New York Munis, the Texas Teachers. That underwriting piece has prevented our private investments from blowing up. The last thing you want is for your venture capital fund to just sink. You don't want to wind up with some one-off fund in a KKR or an Ares or something like that, where you put 50 in and you get 20 back. We've never had that, and it's frankly because of our underwriting processes. So that's why we're able to sort of, I don't want to say beat, but exceed those capital market expectations. The other thing is we're not market timers. When we went passive in the domestic equity pool a few years ago, as you remember, that's sort of a recognition that no matter how much we pay, we're not going to find many managers out there who can beat the market just buying the index. The key takeaways, as you see here, we are higher than our peers for performance. And that last bullet is really the piece I want to focus on cost. Despite being 4.8 bips above benchmark cost, you delivered a 5-year implementation impact of 86.4 bips. What does that mean? For every 4.8 cents we spend in excess of our peers, we deliver 86.4 bips in excess of our peers. So we really are sort of using capitalism, going and finding the best managers. And if they charge us a little bit more, we're fine with that because we get better performance for it. And then I believe is this the last slide? Nope, this is where I spend most of my time, in addition to the legislature, which happy to answer any questions on that funness. You can see, so fiscal 18 is when I started, we had a 0.33% investment fee ratio. That's down to 0.27%. Working on my internal goal is 0.2. I think we can achieve that in the next several years. I'd say 2 to 3. We will need some help from the legislature. For instance, we are a proprietary fund. So how does that work? Well, I have to keep 60 days working capital on the side. So I pull money from you at 7.3%, park it in STIP at 4.79%, pay it out, and pull again. Well, it doesn't make a lot of sense to pull those assets. Why are we not just a fiduciary fund, whereas I have an expense, then I can pull the cost allocation, not have cash sitting uninvested. It is invested, it's just at half the rate. So we can, if we go to fiduciary fund, we could make probably $2 to $3 million a year. Well, cut $2 to $3 million a year off of our $8 million operating budget. So that you start to get pretty meaningful on things like that. But we'll see if the legislature wants to help. Other than that, happy to answer any questions, Madam Chair, and thank you again for the opportunity, and thanks to Director Graham for the great partnership. Not a day goes by I'm not on the phone with him and Director Holohan. Time work related.
Always extremely interesting to me. Since I've been sitting in on this board, it's not, we don't invest our own stuff, and when you go to different things around the country, a lot of people have to, and I admire what you do. There is no way, teach it. As many years of experience as I have, I would not want to do and make the decisions that you have. So I admire what you do, so thank you.
Thank you. And I think we do have the world. You are a benefit administrator. You know the benefit side of the equation better than BOI ever could. We get to lean in on our core competencies, and that's been a great thing. Sorry, Senator.
Dee, do you have some? Yes.
Director Villa, I'm interested in your take on what might happen if, in fact, the governor's budget would split the $100 million down from pension investment, and we would get half of it. How do you see that playing out in the whole scheme of things for us?
You bet. So the governor has $300 million in his executive budget for what I'll call pension stabilization. And that is now introduced as Senate Bill 287. It got dropped on Friday. As the bill is written now, we would park that cash in trust fund and STIP, basically to the way that the bill currently reads. That $300 million would generate an additional 0.2% each year in accruing contributions to both TRS and PERS. So over 10 years, you would get an additional 2% of supplemental contribution from the state. So I believe that gets you about a year in amortization timeframe. Great. I think the thing we have to keep in mind is the triggers over the longer term, because this will be the second supplemental contribution, well, third potentially, because we have the 0.2, then you have that general fund contribution from 2013. You know, from our perspective, any money into the pensions is a great thing. The thing I get concerned about is where, and Senator, you're familiar with this, as soon as things start to get really good, all of a sudden, folks start thinking, well, we can enhance benefits or we can cut contributions, and now we find ourselves backwards. So that I think it's a great conversation for the board to have. I mean, obviously you've got the variable GABA, and that's something that our teachers rely on. But when the legislature starts to weigh in, they don't use a scalpel like you all do, they use sledgehammers. I think that bill has pretty good chance. Senator McCamey is carrying it in the Senate. My understanding is Speaker Lair will be carrying it in the House. So it's looking, you know, pretty good, but it should be a value add for the pension system.
And Director, I haven't read the bill yet, but in hearing about it, do you know how those assets are going to be allocated? Are they going to be half here and half there, or have you heard anything about what's going to happen?
So the 300, Madam Chair, will be a bulk, so it'll be sort of a separate account at BOI, and then it will spit off the interest and income equal to that 0.2% for the two respective systems. Now, we do have that weird limitation in Article 8, Section 13 that says unless it's direct pension or direct workers' compensation, it can't be held in private corporate capital stock. So that basically limits our investable universe to trust fund and STIP, maybe some separate securities, some real estate, which trust fund has. So it'll be one lump sum, and then it'll spit off interest into an income account that will then be payable to PERS and TRS.
Okay, that's a good explanation. Thank you, Director.
You bet.
Thanks, Dee. Anything else? Any questions for
All righty.
Thank you so
Great
much.
to see you all
Great
again.
to see you.
Have a great meeting.
Thank you.
Enjoy your day. Okay, this is another opportunity for public comment, and I know we have a few members of the public online. If anyone would like to say anything, what I'm seeing is an Andrew and a David Severson and Sean Kirkpatrick. All right. Okay. Then we are now on to agenda item 4, administrative business.
Well, Madam Chair, since Member Trost isn't here, and we just heard from the Director of Board Investments, I don't think there's a whole lot to say about the investment report. The latest report we have in your packet, the latest one that was available at the time I sent this out, was through December 31st, and it looks like we had a fiscal year to date return of 3.97. It sounded like that's improved based on what Mr. Villa said earlier, so I'll just leave it at that, and if there are any questions, I'll try to answer them. Hopefully you would ask them of Director Villa.
Yes. All right. So now Nolan, our annual comprehensive financial report, which is beautiful, by the way.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. So, yeah, you can thank Darla for the cover. She always picks out, and she does a great job with that. And you know, we had no recommendations, and we had an unmodified opinion with the report this year again. So, basically a clean bill of health for the retirement system. Some of the highlights, I guess, you know, obviously the more of this you can look at, obviously you'll get a little better understanding of what goes on here at TRS, but on page 1 is our letter, to the members and the retirement board, and kind of touches on some of the highlights there, and it's, just a 3-page quick read. Then on page 13 is where the management discussion and analysis starts, and that's always also touches on the highlights of the financials. And then 16 and 17 are where, the main focus is the fiduciary net position and the change in net position. And those are obviously what all of the notes and required supplemental information that follows, that's where they're derived from, is from these net position and change in net position, so. And if anybody has any questions, obviously, Member Brown and Member Chamberlain, he's not on today maybe, but
No.
though I did send those to you. I don't know if we need to send Dan his copy, but.
We can probably just hold on to it till the next meeting. Dee, did you receive your hard copy?
No, I just sent
Oh,
it
you
today. I
just
didn't
sent it?
realize she wasn't coming.
Never mind.
It's in the mail. But it's also.
I've heard
these are
that too.
These are also posted online if you would, you could look at it on our website, so. The very back too is always good information, the statistical section, and, all the all the board members usually like to look at the very last map there on page 89. Shows, our benefit payments in Montana, by county. So you kind of see where all of our benefit payments are going, and most of the, obviously as retirement benefit payments, those usually just get pumped right back into the economy with purchases. That's really all I had on the annual report, Madam Chair, unless you had any questions or any of the.
No, it does seem overwhelming, so I liked that he gave us the pages to really look at. I mean, you get this and you're like, what?
Yeah,
And
it's a
some of
lot.
it is just boring and.
Yeah, it's a lot to
It's
read.
yours, cool
Awesome.
work, I'm sorry.
Cool work.
No, I'm not putting you
I take
down.
no offense.
No. So yeah, we're on to financial statements and budget reports for you.
All right, these reports that are in front of you on page 28, starting on page 28, are as of December 31st. So into the calendar year, and then we always have the comparison to where we were at 1 year ago, so 12/31 of 23. And you can see on the balance sheet there, our total investments are up, 450, $500 million dollars from 1 year ago. So usually that's the main driver. I mean, none of the our current assets are very similar to where they were, and same with our other assets. So really the driver of the total assets is that total investments, and that's also up around, 450, $500 million. And then the liabilities are very, similar to where they were, which, so there's not much to really look at. You can see our year-to-date income, which, we'll see on the next fund balance it's about 160 million, in the black this year, as opposed to last year. We were actually, as of December 31st, we were in the red, 77 million. So you can see that on the next page of the fund balance statement on page 29. We have our total revenue is up significantly, and that's mostly investment revenue, of course. And then the expenses are similar. Obviously, we're always gonna have more benefit payments, and we actually have a few more withdrawals, but our admin expenses are very similar in some of the other categories. So That leaves us with our bottom line there of the 160 million for revenue over expenses this year. The next page is kind of, page 30 is our investment revenue and expenses by type. And you can see that the majority of our gains there are just the appreciation of our investments, significantly better than where we were at last year. I know we had a really strong spring last year in fiscal year 24, so hopefully we can have a strong spring, or at least a stable spring, and we'll finish where we need to be. But
Is that amortization expense, is that the end of our computer
Interest.
programs, interest?
yeah, so we amortize the InTrust phase 1 has been amortized for several years, but phase 2 just finished amortizing in fiscal year 24, so we won't have any more amortization expense on that in fiscal year 25, the current fiscal year. So so that's why you see our total administrative expenses are actually less than last year, but they're almost less than last year by exactly that 170,000 in amortization expense. So any questions on the financials? The budget is also as of December 31st, and you can see we had some vacancy savings here for the personal services, so we expect to have a somewhere in the $40,000 to $60,000 range for of a budget surplus in that particular category. And then we usually, it just kind of depends on if we have any unexpected expenses, but we should have an overall budget surplus of somewhere in the 150 to 200,000 range, and that's a good, comfortable place to keep it, just to make sure. If we did have a full staff all year, that would be a lot tighter, and we definitely have not had as many legal expenses, especially in the last few fiscal years, as usual, so that's definitely been a surplus item, if you will. So page 32 is our biggest category of expenses, our contracted services, and you can see we're 50% through the fiscal year, but we've only spent about 38% of of that category on our budget. So we're saving some money, and one of the biggest categories is right there, the legal fees. We budgeted like 37,000, and we haven't spent any of that, so that's obviously given us a pretty good surplus there. And we don't have any delinquent agencies. We always show the board that each board meeting, and right now there's no employers that are delinquent. So,
Okay.
too good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have a question, Madam Chair.
All right, Dee?
Thank you. You said that we had $150,000 to $200,000 surplus, and I always kind of get uncomfortable that we're hanging on to people's money where it could be used someplace else. If in fact we had less of a surplus, couldn't we, if something drastic came up, go for a supplemental appropriation?
So we don't, the TRS board passes our budget each year. We're not, appropriated through the legislature in any way. So really, the budget that's passed at the May board meeting is just kind of what we are allowed to spend internally before coming to all of you with a budget amendment if we needed to. But there is no budget set aside. It's just,
It's not
it's
sitting
kind of
in
an
some
arbitrary
fund.
number, yeah.
It's invested, correct?
All of our funds are invested, you know, then they're not set aside for any other reason.
Right.
Unless, I don't know if I answered that properly, Sean,
Yes. Is that the history of, have we done that? I mean, is that sort of a normal surplus, or am I looking at it with too sharp an eye?
I would say that's
Yeah.
pretty standard. I mean, that's still a pretty small percentage of our overall budget. And had Denise not retired unexpectedly, 46,000 of that would be almost completely chewed up, right? So,
Okay.
I mean, and really to get to the heart of what your first question, to make sure you have the answer, is those funds are invested at BOI until such time as we, sort of write the check to make a payment for something. So it's not like we're holding on to somebody else's money, and it's not out there working for us.
All right, that makes me feel better, Sean, thank you.
You bet.
It's a good question, though, thank you. All right, so we are on to the Personnel Committee report. This morning, Elliot and I met with Sean to discuss his overall performance evaluation. And thinking, blanking on his name right now.
Jim
Cairns helps us with this. So Elliot and I spoke to him last week in an online call and went over all of the things where we decided to put Sean in his evaluation. We use the staff's feedback, we use the board's feedback, and we use Sean's feedback as well. And we also just discuss what we think. We look at the comments. We look at really everything. It's really an all-encompassing process. So today I'm just going to start with kind of letting you know that overall Sean is above and beyond where we would expect him. He's really in the outstanding range between outstanding and exceptional. Each one of these has a rating, and you'll see that the board has rated him very high in all of them. So I'm just going to start with the strategic plan implementation. And of course, this is what the board uses to determine where we want the staff and Sean to focus their energies and time during the year. In August, every other year, we set this up. But Sean keeps us all apprised of where we are in our goals, what extra things we might need, if anything comes up that we can't do. So from all of those different things, we ended up with an overall rating of 4.6. So you can see that that is very high.
Sure. Next thing that we talked about was networking and outreach. Again, Sean performs at a very high level. Talked a little bit about making sure that we continue to have conversations outside of our office with administrators and staff. He's again rated at that 4.5 level. So again, doing a phenomenal job.
The next one is supervision and performance management. We do rely a lot on the feedback from staff. And I, of all people, understand that filling out forms and all kinds of things that come at you all the time is hard. So we got about 8 staff members who filled it out, but it was all very positive feedback. And I kind of feel from a personal perspective that if we were hearing from staff, it would not be the best thing. So it's usually when you don't hear a lot, things are great. But overall, supervision and performance management is at a 4.5.
On to the legislature. This is one of Sean's strongest areas. He was rated at a 4.83. I think it was the highest ranking. Just very articulate when it comes to discussions with folks at the legislature, making sure that he's advocating for TRS, and then also maintaining those conversations or those relationships even when the session isn't going on. So just really does a phenomenal job with making sure that he is doing what's best for TRS at the legislative level.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And then we just get to his competencies. And again, overall, they're all above the 4 level. We don't have to go through each one of those. But, Sean is when we looked at, what we do is we kind of look at what he rates himself as, what the staff rates him as, and what the board rates him as, and we kind of come to a midpoint. Sometimes it's an average, sometimes we say, no, we agree with this, or let's put him down here. And overall, he's the one who rates himself the lowest. So he brings his scores down, whereas staff and the board really think highly of Sean. And we very much appreciate what he does for this organization and his 12 years of generous, work to this fund and this thing that a lot of teachers around the state of Montana rely upon. So in that sense as well, we had a long conversation about trying to get Sean's pay commensurate where it needs to be. And we do, each year in May, we go through the budget for recommending pay increases and all those kinds of things. And I know that Sean in the past has been very humble in saying, yeah, no, not right now, this isn't gonna work, but we believe that it is time to get Sean to his 100% market range, and that is using last year's, the 2022. So we may even look at this a little differently, but especially when we looked at a number of things. I mean, obviously his overall performance appraisal, but as well as the hiring at the PERS, that director came in quite substantially more than Sean with, a brand new director. And we want to get Sean to that 100% of his thing. We're looking to do it in 2 times, in 2 different years, 2 different budgets. But I know that doing that also helps to get other people up higher where we need them to as well. So we're gonna ask for a budget, well, when we come back in May, this is when we ask for the budget, but you'll be knowing that Sean is also in that. He's not just getting what the state is offering, the 4% or whatever it is. We want to get him to his market range, which actually is he's almost he is about $8 an hour less than where he should be. And we want to get him up. So there we go. If there's any comments or concerns or questions about that, we can address
I have a
those
question. So that's gonna come up in our budget discussion
in May.
in May?
Yes.
Okay.
Dee's got a question.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Madam Chair, did you say that 8 staff members had filled in the survey?
Yes, I did.
How many staff members are there, Sean, in the office?
When we're fully staffed, there's 23, including myself.
Okay, and I guess my point is, Madam Chair, I think we should be putting a little more pressure on the people working in the office to fill out that form. I think that's part of their job duty. And I think it does not take that much time, and we need to encourage more participation.
I will tell you, Dee, that that Jim bothered them. He sent a lot of emails and calls and whatnot, and the response was, we're just too busy. And so I actually just feel like I had to respect that because I do understand. I think, like I said before, if it were a problem, I think we'd hear about it. I had a form that I got chastised for not filling out very recently, and I didn't really care about it, but I certainly filled out the one about our insurance coverage, and because I was angry about it. So I know what that is like. I guess that's where I'm coming from, is I just want to respect that they are overwhelmed and they're working extremely hard. But you're right. I mean, I would say that maybe we need to find a time. If, okay, we're going to give you this amount of time today or some extra something. We did offer, I think, a $5 Starbucks card or something, but and we're looking at ways to try to get them more interested in filling that out. And each year we kind of have that conversation, Dee. So if you have any ideas, please let me know.
Yeah, I think we need to come up with something, and I don't think it's paying a $5 card. I think it's part of a job description to me. If that's what we expect, that's what should be done. And I guess that discussion needs to happen in the future, but I am a little disappointed that so few filled it out, because I know his score probably would be better than what you actually have on chart.
Yeah, and that is pretty typical, Dee, just so that you know. I mean, some years we've had about 13. We've never gotten more than half of the staff. So, but you're right, so the culture might need to be just that we really do expect this, so,
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah, you bet. Especially when it comes from an outside entity too, so that may be problematic, I don't know, I mean, with Jim sending it, I don't wanna fill this out, I don't even know what it is. So I don't know, but we can figure it out.
Well, I did clarify that it was a legitimate email, because it does come through, it looks kind of goofy. I think John forwarded it to me and asked me if this is legit, and I said, yeah. And I replied to all staff, letting them know, you should have got this, it is legitimate. But
It's also possible that Jim just, as part of his averaging algorithm, removes the highest and lowest 10 reports.
yeah, right.
We actually see all of them. We see all the comments, we see it all. All right,
Do you have that up now?
I do.
Okay,
okay.
just making sure.
We'll get to the questions in a minute, but, so looking ahead, it's tentative board meeting dates. And, we have the next one is May 9th, which I believe is a Friday,
And the actuary will be here for that.
and the actuary will be there, so that one is pretty much set in stone. We need to figure out how to be here or be online for that. So, does that work for everyone, May 9th? And we look ahead, August 1st will be important this year as well. We can adjust that because that's really just the board, and that is when we do. We set aside the strategic plan this year is our big one where we'll go through it line item by line item and not just say, is this good or what do we need to do? We'll go through it again completely. And then October 3rd is always an important one because we use that with PERS, and then December 5th can be adjusted as well. So just knowing ahead that the May 9th and the October 3rd ones, we should put them on our calendar.
October 3rd.
For me, for now, those look good, but could change. I doubt it, but we'll see if Dan and I are back on the radio again. Hoping he wants to retire.
Solomon?
Yeah.
Yeah, funny.
Okay. Then we are on to some action items, which is our out-of-state travel. Do we need to do them all individually or can we do them all at once?
Madam Chair, they were all approved in your May budget.
Oh.
It's just a matter of us bringing it for formal approval for each. So I think you can make a motion to approve the travel request for PRISM, GFOA, NAPA, and NCTR all at once and just vote once, if you so please.
And in our binder there is the cost for each one. It looks like
Yes.
Memphis, Tennessee, and Washington DC, and Sacramento, and I don't know where this one is, Denver. So, and I love the fact that we are big parts of all of these things. We need to stay, I know from experience, going to these things is important.
Yeah, so the PRISM one, which is John's association. NAPA, or not NAPA, GFOA, Tammy's organization. NAPA is Chief Legal Counsel James's association, and then NCTR Director.
Okay. All right, can I have a motion for the out-of-state travel?
So
Motion to
moved,
approve.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dee.
I'll second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of approving the out-of-state travel requests of John, Tammy, James, and Sean indicate with saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well, the motion passes. We also have, and I was talking about this morning, we also have a tuition reimbursement request, which is exciting because it was one of the things that we brought to our staffed, hoping that, you know, we could help with those types of things and not have them go out of their own pockets, and they can get what they need to be better at their job here. So it looks like Jackson Simonson is asking to have his tuition reimbursed, and it's a portion of the tuition, correct? I can't remember exactly.
So, Madam Chair, it's in the policy that was provided in your packet. Obviously, this is the first time that we are going to have the opportunity to utilize it, but it's up to $3,500 per fiscal year, so it likely would only cover a portion, but still, it's a 100% of that $3,500 if they get an A, 80% if they get a B, and it definitely will help defray the cost of continuing their education. And Jackson's request specifically is to pursue a Master of Business Administration from Dakota Wesleyan University, which they are an accredited university. I did all the, you know, I followed everything that's laid out in the policy. I had to make policy to make sure that the degree program meets the requirements of our policy, and it does. And what you would be approving, my recommendation would be for you to do, and it's outlined in the policy as a possibility, is you can approve the degree program rather than approve, you know, on a class by class basis. So let's say he takes, you know, three classes during the fiscal year and they're $5,000 a piece. You're still only gonna be paying $3,500 of that $15,000, but then we don't have to come back the following year when he takes 3 more to get the $3,500 approved for the following year. So I don't know if you had a chance to read the policy. We did put it in place in 2015 as a way to, you know, sort of augment the benefits, or, you know, it's not direct pay, but it certainly is. If they're improving theirself in a manner that might help them do better for TRS, the board at that time thought this was a good approach to help offset some of those costs on their behalf.
Madam Chair.
Yes,
Director, I think this is a wonderful program. I also would ask, is there a commitment by the person we give these funds to for their improvement of their education and to help TRS that they aren't going to jump the system in a year?
Yeah, so Madam Chair, Member Brown, yep, there is a retention policy paragraph in our policy itself, and it says, you know, if they terminate within 12 months of being reimbursed by TRS, then they're gonna have to pay back to TRS on a prorated basis. It's covered right here on the screen. So
Yeah,
that, yes,
thank you.
it's definitely not forever, but there is some retention that's tied to this.
Thank you.
You bet.
all right. Is there any further discussion? All right. Well, let's have a motion to approve the tuition reimbursement request for Jackson.
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion?
So you're gonna go visit the Corn Palace?
I think it's all online.
Okay. All those in favor of the approval of the tuition reimbursement request indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I,
Chair votes aye as well, and the motion passes.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have a question of Sean. You said it was all online. Is this to be done on their own time, or is it being done in office time?
So, Madam Chair and Member Brown, it is to be done on their own time. We address it at the very end of the policy. You know, they need to make every possible effort to schedule things outside of normal office time. If for some reason they did have to leave, I mean, we would make them use either comp time or vacation time to attend something. This is in South Dakota, so it's gonna have to be all online. It's not gonna be able to do anything in person.
All right, thank you.
Are they allowed to use work equipment? Is that written in there? I didn't see
It's
it.
not written in there. It would be part of the overall state policy on computer usage. It needs to be
Okay.
for the
That makes
purposes
sense.
of, I mean, yeah, so I mean, if if a person were doing that, during their break time and it's something that was approved by TRS, then we won't have an issue. But
Right.
if they're doing it for 2 hours when we're paying them to do TRS work, then
Right.
that is a problem, yes.
Okay.
Because that's not what you're approving. You're approving the reimbursement of tuition on their own time.
All right. So this is an opportunity for public comment once again. And then just put on our calendars for certain, May 9th of 2025 in the TRS boardroom as our next meeting date. So we are on to the executive director's report.
All right,
Sean.
Madam Chair, members of the board, John, is that still shared?
It is.
Okay, I'm just double checking. So, for the executive director's report, we have our staff update. As you all know, Denise Pizzini, retired unexpectedly in the middle of December after 17 years as our chief legal counsel. We're certainly gonna miss Denise's expertise. However, we were lucky I think in getting a great pool of candidates for her replacement, and James, who's sitting to my left, was our successful candidate. And you know, it's rare to have somebody come in with public pension law experience, so I think we're very lucky to have James, because he worked for Impera for the last 5 to 6 years, and comes here with some public pension plan law experience, which is hard to come by, especially in Montana.
Would you mind introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about yourself?
Madam Chair, members of the board, Bill, thank you for bringing me on board. As Sean said, I was at Impera for about the last 6 years. Prior to that, I had an undergraduate degree in business and finance, worked in finance for a bit, and then in commercial construction project management. And a meandering path brought me to Impera and now here, but very excited about it. I come from a family of teachers. I understand the importance of what TRS does and the importance of my role in particular. And I'm excited to hit the ground running and meet the challenge in filling Denise's shoes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Truly. We're glad to have you and lucky to have you.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just got a question.
Or Dee does? Okay, Dee?
I just wanted to know about kids or family or,
Madam Chair, Board Member Brown, I am married and I have 3 awesome children and a fantastic wife. My oldest son is 10 and then my daughters are 7 and 4. So they're keeping us busy. But fortunately I live very close by, so it's not too hard to get them out the door and then run into work.
very good. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
For the fun stage of life. All right.
Okay, sorry, let me get
I was
this.
surprised by number 3.
Yes.
That's okay.
So, then the third update there for staffing is Jennifer Van Sickle, who is our communications specialist for about a year. She was decided to take a job in the private sector, doing some marketing and communication stuff for a large cybersecurity firm. She seemed very excited about that, and I believe the pay was quite a bit more than what we were even paying her supervisor here at TRS. So we were unfortunately lost Jennifer. We did just finish up doing interviews for her replacement last week. It was a large pool of applicants. I think we had 31 applicants, which was great. And we had a couple of really good, strong candidates. An offer was extended on Thursday, but they wanted to take the weekend to think about it. So hopefully by the end of the day today, I'll know one way or the other if our first choice accepted the position or not.
Okay, that's good news. 31, that's wonderful.
Yes. So that's it for staff update. And then as far as legislative update goes, like as a reminder, our legislative committee is comprised of member Brown and then member Trost. So we meet as needed. We have not actually had to have a Teams meeting. We've been able to discuss things via email for a short, brief telephone call with both of them separately so far this year, because nothing's been that controversial. We of course have our two bills that we brought forward, which are House Bill 67 and House Bill 51. The housekeeping bill is sitting in the Senate, passed the House, it's in the Senate, it's waiting for a hearing date. I anticipate it'll make it through the Senate without any trouble. House Bill 51, which was the University System Supplemental Bill, had a hearing. It was amended to extend the date from 2033 to 2046 and to increase the contribution rate from 4.73 or 72, excuse me, to 6%. The amendment passed with flying colors, and then it was immediately tabled. So that bill is not going to go anywhere this session, but it is food for thought. And Mark Thane, or legislator Representative Thane, actually sort of did the legwork on the amendment and spoke to that amendment before they voted on it. And so I told him, well, he might have won himself a job next session as a sponsor. And he seemed like he would be okay with that. So House Bill 158, there are other legislation that's coming forward that are not at our request, but obviously impact TRS. And so I wrote this, a couple of weeks ago at this point. Some of the information has changed. I think the funding bill is now, the one that Mr. Villa was speaking to, is now House Bill 278, I believe. I mean, I need to verify that because I was out of the office on Friday, but it has a bill number. Otherwise, there's the bills that are coming forward all slightly adjust or tweak working retiree provisions. House Bill 158 would bump the number of years you can work under 1927-32, which is our emergency hire statute, from 3 years to 5 years during an individual's lifetime. That one passed the House and is over in the Senate, awaiting a hearing. LC 2786 has a bill number now. I don't know it off the top of my head, but what it would do is add mentoring to the exception that's already in state law for substitute teaching. So a person would be able to go to work for up to 45 days during their 120-day break in service, only to substitute teach for a temporarily absent teacher that's already in place, or mentor a newly hired teacher. All they're adding is mentoring a newly hired teacher. So we're just informational on that. I don't believe that will have any fiscal impact on TRS at all. Let's see, LC 1116. This was another adjustment. This one actually did have a hearing last week. I went and testified on LC 1116. I apologize, I don't have my legislative folder with me. Otherwise I could tell you the bill number. But what it would do is add the Office of Public Instruction essentially would be added to 1927-32. It's not exactly like that because it's going to be a brand new section of law. It'll probably end up being 1927-35. But essentially it copies all the same requirements as 732, but the employer, instead of it being a school district, would be the Office of Public Instruction. So they could hire somebody for up to 5 years if they retired with at least 27 years, with no limit on the amount they pay them while they receive their benefit, in an attempt to sort of rebuild the Office of Public Instruction. And we were informational on that bill. I suspect it will look through the system and will become law relatively easily. And then, as we already talked earlier today, there is the funding bill that is going to be coming forward. It's now just now been introduced. I've not yet spoke directly to, I've given Member Brown and Member Trost, a heads up because the language was out there, so they at least are aware that it was coming, and we will meet on it prior to the bill hearing to determine whether we're a proponent or informational. I would imagine we'll land on being a proponent since it improves the funding of the retirement system. So, any questions from the board about the legislative update?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Director, would you care to add anything from what Director Villa said about the governor's budget and the possible ramifications for TRS?
So, Madam Chair and Representative, Member Brown, so the bill, according to Dan, I haven't had a chance to look this morning because we did my appraisal, and then we came right in here. My understanding is it's now Senate Bill 278. What it does is it sets aside $300 million that could potentially be accessed by the retirement system if we had a rate of return, if our inception to date return was lower than our assumed rate of return for 2 consecutive fiscal years. That's possible, but it's unlikely to happen. And if it did, then what would happen is, so 50% of it would be available, 50% of half of it. So we would, like, basically 25% or 75 million would be available to TRS to help offset that loss in year one, and then potentially an additional 75 million would be available in year two. The other 150 million would be available to PERS. And what it would do is help offset losses in a time of real sort of drastic market volatility. Whether or not that ever would actually, come to pass is hard to say. It's fairly unlikely, because I think we would be in a position where the actuary would likely be recommending that we reduce our rate of return assumption if we were approaching that point, but it's possible, it could happen. And if it did, we would have access to those funds. Otherwise, what it does is it increases the employer contribution for all of our employers by 0.2% per year, every year for 10 years. So it ends up being a 2% increase over a 10-year period. And what it does is it reduces our amortization period by 2 years, not one, it's 2. We would amortize in 19 years instead of 21. And it brings in, I have the fiscal note stuff all worked up in my office. It brings in substantial amount of contributions, especially when you get 10 years out and it's a full 2% of payroll. I think it has a good chance of passing. I mean, the money is there to set aside the 300 million, and that can grow. It's not automatically used for that 0.2% contribution, but the language says that it's available for the interest earnings on that 300 million is available as an appropriation to pay those. So the legislature would have to say, we're gonna appropriate these funds to, say, OPI for an instance, in order for them to have access to them to pay their contributions. For our purposes, the contributions will have to be paid either way, whether they make the appropriation or not. So
the school district could have to come up with the money.
yes, they could. Yep. Yeah, and so could state agencies. If the legislature doesn't act to do something to make that appropriation, then they still would have to come up with that 0.2% either way each year. I think it has a good shot, because if you think about personal services, your pay, a 0.2% increase is really not much to get too worried about. I mean, you're probably looking at somewhere between 2 and 4% year over year increase anyway for other reasons. So 0.2 is probably something they can live with.
And Director, I'm just worried that once those funds are stuck someplace, that somebody creative in that legislative body is going to come up with a way to rob the funds. Are there any, definite parameters on that bill? Or I guess I'll just have to read it for myself.
So, Madam Chair, Member Brown, it is set up in a way that it could be rated. It does not go into TRS trust fund. They created a new special revenue account fund that then can be invested. So that 300 million's kind of set aside, and they're, it's set up to where it could earn investment earnings and grow. And there's a few other accounts in state statute that once they hit a certain point, the money, the revenue stream going into them would then trickle into this state special revenue account for pensions. But you're not wrong in what you're thinking. It's set aside. It could potentially be rated down the road at some point, because it's not TRS trust fund. It's a different pot of money. However, the 0.2% employer contributions, those would come directly to TRS and would go into TRS Trust Fund.
Thank you.
Always good questions, Dee, thank you. You know how that legislature can work.
Those are the tricks.
Uh-huh, you know the tricks. So this is another opportunity then for public comment. And we have a break scheduled. Do we want to do that real quickly and then come back and finish the meeting?
I think we have the IT manager report first.
Oh, yep, I skipped you.
Yeah, I know, but it's, nobody wants to.
John,
you're
just so quiet back there. No, sorry, the TRS IT manager's report.
Alright.
I totally skipped you.
I know we're running a little ahead of schedule, so you guys should probably get another cup of coffee, because I'm gonna go long on that.
Good.
It's only 7 minutes ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you. On page 57, it's the first page that IT manager's report. It's just a comparison of fiscal year 23, 24, and 25 year-to-date of where our IT expenditures are at. The total amount for fiscal year 25 year-to-date, it looks like it's above 50%, it is above 50% compared to last year as we're halfway through the fiscal. But some of the enterprise services and asset broker expenses, we realize we get billed those by ITSD in the first couple months of the fiscal. We won't see those again for the rest. So we're on pace to be real similar to where we were last year. And you'll see a note on the bottom that there's a new line item that was added fiscal year 24-25 for application development that we're paying to ITSD. And that was for the template design and building of the new TRS website and the Cascade CMS environment. So those professional services that they did to help build out that template in the Cascade CMS system. Any questions about any of the expense categories or expenses you're seeing there? You can see a trend up on top that our hardware expenses is definitely going south, and that's kind of a movement to us, moving to like really using a cloud provider, and that's ITSD operating as a cloud provider, and we're consuming all of their services. We're no longer buying hardware, but we're doing everything as either application or software as a service to the state IT services division. And then on page 58, we've got a kind of a summary of IT topics here. The first category there is current software maintenance agreements. I guess on page 57 back there, you can also see that our software maintenance has decreased over the years as we've moved more to consuming services from IT, the state's IT services division. We are no longer paying out to third-party providers for licensing and because we're consuming that through the state. So we're still maintaining Adobe Cold Fusion licensing, and you can see there's an asterisk there that in fiscal year 25, is that accurate? We did make a purchase for additional licensing. We split out the production mTrust servers into it. We set up a reporting server, required new Adobe licensing for that server environment. So we've had an additional one-time cost to buy the license, and it will have an increase in annual maintenance going forward for additional Cold Fusion licensing. The test rail licensing is for our test management software system that we use for application or software development, building out the mTrust system. And our expenditure for Twilio and SendGrid, that's our multi-factor authentication that stood up in front of our member portal that requires members to get a verification code sent to them before they can access our system. Our document converter software, that's a server-based system that we're running, that active PDF. Converts rich text, Word documents, or other types of documents into PDF in bulk, like tens of thousands at a time. We've been maintaining that software for a number of years. And then the Atlassian Jira is the last one on this list there. that's our issue tracking software that we use for all maintenance for both the TRS website and for the mTrust applications, our software system. Recently completed TRS IT projects. Really the big thing in the last year since last time I report was the Cold Fusion CF Wheels framework upgrade. We had been maintaining the latest versions of Adobe Cold Fusion, but the CF Wheels framework, which is a model view controller framework that architecture that the mTrust is built upon, hadn't been upgraded in a number of years. And I don't recall exactly what issue we ran into, but we determined that we needed to upgrade the CF Wheels to either resolve the problem or take advantage. I think it was to resolve an issue we ran into in mTrust development. And so we took on the upgrade of CF Wheels, and the reason we hadn't done it before was because it necessitated like a regression testing of pretty much every component of mTrust to make sure that we didn't need to look for changes. So AMA, Tammy and Monica, along with AMA, identified a significant number of pieces of mTrust application that needed to be touched or updated or modified to allow for the CF Wheels to upgrade went through. So actually it went through in retrospect relatively easily, but I'd still think that we dedicated probably a quarter to that, 90 days, you would think of.
Oh, yeah.
From the time we really started to roll it out to the time we were in full production with it, it required quite a bit of effort. And then upcoming projects, we still have a source code repository migration planned for hopefully this spring. And the reason we haven't done that yet hasn't been because we're not prepared for it technologically. It's more of a timing issue with the rollout of the CF Wheels, and then the current, we just rolled into production the elective membership deferral changes for mTrust and the employer portals. Just with those software development projects going on, we didn't want to also migrate the back-end source code repository and version control system at the same time. So what we're looking for is a window of opportunity when we've kind of completed mTrust development, one phase of it, like a sub-project, and we've kind of started to get a little bit of a clean slate, not a lot going on in software development right at the moment, to where we can then migrate the source code repository over from Subversion into Git, and then give the developers a chance to pick up the learning curve on switching from how they work with the previous system and how the new system's going to work. So that's our forecast, is to hopefully get that done this quarter. And then the TRS web portals upgrade with the deployment of the new TRS website that's going to be coming sometime in the near future. We're also going to upgrade the portals, starting with the member portals, to have the look and feel to match the new website, and to also be responsive and mobile friendly, which will be a huge move forward for our membership, especially the younger active members of our system that are much more expecting to be able to access services from us on mobile devices. And we've actually started, gotten underway on that, and are moving forward with it. We've got a good proof of concept in there. So, but that should be also springtime is what we're anticipating, Q2 for this year.
Do you want to speak to the first page?
Did I miss? Let me take a look at that. I didn't bring it with me.
Here, you
Pulled up.
I'll pass
I got
this one down to you.
I can see this.
It's, you know what's in it, it's the infrastructure update.
I'm sorry.
I was wondering why you started on,
I am sorry. I
I was
actually,
reading this and I got lost.
Wait, yeah,
it's just kind of a
I
quick
just thought it
update.
was like, okay.
well, it's new computer code. You start on 57, go to 58, and then you're back at 56. So on page 56, IT infrastructure, I say thank you, boss. Our server environment, this hasn't changed. We're fully virtualized, no physical servers. All of our systems are hosted by State of Montana's IT Services Division at the data center here in Helena and fully redundant to the data center in Miles City. So that if we had a major outage at the data center here, we would actually switch over and continue operating from the Miles City data center. We've got 15 servers providing, serving up the development, test, staging, and production environments for mTrust and for the TRS website. That also includes the new reporting server that required the new Adobe licensing. We've got development, test, and staging SQL server, and we've also got a production SQL server. Those are our database servers. Those are logically separated into two separate servers, so that if we do something drastic on the development, test, and staging and blow the server up, it doesn't impact our production system, which is why we have them segregated that way. Our data file server, we have two application servers sitting out there. One of them is running that PDF converter and some other software that does just daily maintenance, report conversion. All reports that come out of mTrust are picked up by this one of the application servers, and then we have some in-house built software that's running to convert those text files into something that can be injected into our content management system. It happens automated every 5 minutes, 24/7. It works really well. It's been working well for a long time. And then our source code and software version control server, and that server will actually go away when we do the migration for the source code repository. We'll no longer be running a server that we manage hosting our software repository system, but instead we'll be running off of the state's GitLab environment, which is an enterprise hosted solution. So we'll actually, the next time I report to you, we should be down at least one server. Our workstation environment is predominantly virtualized, which is most of our computing is on virtualized Windows desktops. So our users log into a physical device. Most of them are laptops, and that was necessitated by the pandemic. Everybody got a laptop. We switched from having small pieces of micros here, hardware here that the user logged into, but a laptop. But once they log into the laptop, then they launch a client that takes them to a virtualized desktop, Windows, and that can be accessed, which is running on the state's virtualized environment at the data center. Probably the biggest advantage to that is that, and this is a change since the pandemic, but during the pandemic, a person had to have their laptop and establish a VPN into the state here to be able to get onto that virtualized server. But with us moving to ITSD fully hosted services, if one of our employees happens to be on vacation somewhere, or they drop their laptop in the pool, they can actually access their virtual environment through another, any piece of hardware now, laptop, as long as they have their multi-factor authentication on their phone, the ability to get in, they know their username and password. They can run that up, so it's no longer dependent on them having a piece of state-owned hardware, which is more flexible in that regards. We do have some people we still have a few microcomputers in here. Most notably, the front desk is running microcomputers. I think, Tammy, you have a micro still at your desk, and then both of our imaging technicians run microcomputers. In those situations, there wasn't a need to have the expense of a laptop, because those pieces never leave the building, and those employees never need to work remotely. The front desk folks and the imaging technicians. And then, so you see we've got a total of 23 laptop computers. I've got a note there, 20 and 23 of the TRS FTE have assigned laptops, and the 3 that don't are the executive secretary and the 2 imaging technicians that don't have opportunities for remote work. And our contractor and developer environments are still the same as they were previously, is that all the development that's being done is being done on virtualized desktops inside the state network, so that all that application source code that's being managed and developed is being done off of virtual environments that we deploy for them, and so keeping everything inside the state network. So I apologize for missing page 1 again on that report.
It's all right.
All right, so any questions about any of this very exciting IT stuff?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Madam Chair, I'm always in awe of anybody that can talk IT, and I appreciate John Noble and the people who work in a field that I really probably have no interest in other than to use it. But should we be concerned with our IT guy using words like cold fusion that sound more like a Starbucks coffee than the IT desk?
No, no.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
I have a question. So has there been any like downtime or lag with getting support from the state if something's not working?
There's been a change, in certain aspects. We have seen an increase in service level, in service response. And the change has been when we managed our own virtualized environment. We weren't a customer to the state. We had, originally we had our own physical servers that we managed and they ran our virtual environment. And then for a number of years, we had a virtual environment that we paid for, but from the state, that they gave to us and we managed 100%. If there was an outage, we could instantly get in, we had full authoritative access to go fix it. Now it's similar to Amazon Web Services or Google's Cloud as we put in a ticket. And, but in the state's defense, we haven't seen, one is their uptime's been very good, and two is the response to incident, especially with our computing environment, has been good. We haven't seen outages where we've had users unable to work because we have a ticket that hasn't been addressed. We've had network outages that have impacted not just us, but the building next door that were, and Impera upstairs that were more widespread, that had to do with infrastructure, maybe whether it was a switch, I think a switch down here, that I don't think was really something that anybody could expedite. That we could, if we were running our own equipment, we would have still been, we would have come to the same issue and there's nothing we could have done about it. So, putting in the ticket and waiting is different. And at the time we do it, it's like if we had control, I could go fix this. That's how I think we look at it, right?
Right.
We no longer have control, we can no longer go in and fix it ourselves. But I don't think that we've had a lot of complaints of, we would be getting more work done if ITSD was more responsive in their defense. So I think that it's been pretty good. And,
So more positive than negative.
I think so, yeah. I will say this though, is that Rex Merrick, our network admin's been here for a long, long time. When we ran our own stuff, Rex was extremely responsive, he's extremely knowledgeable, and he was able to get everything fixed like right now. And we've lost a little bit of that, but overall, I don't think it's been bad. And I think that it has freed us up to focus on other aspects of IT instead of having to, manage all that stuff.
For those of us that have been around and used to that instant response, it is a little bit of an adjustment. You just have to focus on something else.
Right, when someone else is in charge.
Yeah. It's always instantaneous, and like you said, when something went wrong, but now we have to have a little bit of a delay, but I think all in all, it's been good.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Very much. Informational. All right, so now let's do our break. We'll take a 15-minute, we'll come back at 10:15. And we are on to agenda item number 7, the legal counsel's report.
Madam Chair, members of the board, this is again Jim Malizia, Chief Legal Counsel. There are no pending legal issues at this time.
It's always
It's an
good.
easy one.
That's simple.
We like it.
You got 15 minutes, come on.
I can create a lawsuit if you'd like.
No, please
No,
no.
I don't think so.
We had some that went on for decades.
Yeah.
So we are on to Tammy, the applications and benefit adjustments.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the applications on retirement benefits, the quarterly board report that's including the package for your information. We had, of course, the active and retired folks are gonna start getting busier as we get closer to June. We had a total of 33 recipients loaded since the last board meeting for an average monthly benefit of over $1,200, average age of 60 plus, and average service about close to 15 years.
That looks like a nice list for you this time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep, so it's gonna get
Very
longer.
small. All right, so on to long-range planning discussion item.
All right, Madam Chair, members of the board, well, we're nearing the end of our 2-year planning. As far as like the length of how long this specific commitment worksheet's going to work for us, we'll do a full-on strategic plan renewal in August. So there's not a lot to update the board on. I did highlight or put in red font, I guess, the things that have changed or that would be an update to you. And the first one there is at the bottom of page 1 of the commitment worksheet, which is the responsive web design. The bones are all there. You all saw a demo of it. It's just a matter now of getting the content in there and reviewed and approved by the appropriate staff members. So a lot of the content is already built. Jennifer Van Sickle did do that before she left. However, it needs final review by myself and Tammy, and sometimes it could even be one of the functional teams that needs to review it, and then some small modifications will need to be made. But I mean, it's probably, I would say, 80% of where it needs to be now. It's just a matter of getting the content worded the way we want it to. So it will roll out, and it should roll out in that April-May timeframe of this spring. And then the rest of it, there really isn't much, there's no update on any of the rest of it. I mean, clearly, the legislative pieces of this are underway, and I already gave an update on that during the executive director's report. So I think rather than me go through and reread this same thing to you again for the 10th time, I'll let you ask questions if you have any, Madam Chair.
My only one would have been the next survey in 2025. What time of year does she usually do that? I know she's busy with the website right now.
So I believe Darla usually does that in the fall.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And we would look to do that, so next fall after the start of the school year.
School year, all
Yep.
right, good.
And then you talked about outreach, like going to the different places, instead of having staff travel, do it to more of an in-house remote, people can get on the phones and you started talking about doing that, correct?
Yeah, so I think we can sort of dive further into that in August, but I think there's been a steady downward trend in in-person attendance, to the point where some of the places that we went, including some of the larger towns, it was not worth doing compared to what we're getting for attendance through the webinars.
Right.
For like Ready, Set, Retire presentations and TRS 101 presentations. My attendance at the mass meetings and potentially at an MCEL meeting, my attendance, depending on the area and what the weather's like, can be really, really good, or it can be pretty low. But those meetings are just more a function of what's going on that specific day in their area. Like when I went to Fort Peck, there was a blizzard, and I think only 4 showed up. But when I went to the one in Missoula, it was 35 superintendents showed up. So it just depends on what's going on. And I mean, remember, Elliot can probably speak to this better than I can. They seem to really appreciate me being there, and then they feel like they have a direct line to me because they make that one-on-one connection. And then if they have a question a month later, they're more apt to call and get it right the first time.
Right.
Yeah.
But the Ready, Set, Retire, those are probably something we need to look at, moving more to webinar-based than in person.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of where we're at. I think we still would want to go to the annual conference, because you have a better chance of reaching more people in a one-stop shop. But even that, the attendance at that has really dropped off. So, but it's still better than what we're getting when we go to just a specific school district to do it, yep.
Okay.
And I will say, I like the fact that you're really working with the superintendents. We've had, in the past, adversarial relationships with superintendents because, because of a lack of communication or because of lawsuits and different things like that. So
Right.
it's really good because they're a huge part of what we need to,
Yeah,
we need to be on the same page.
right, yes, they're definitely in a position to make decisions that could potentially put them at odds with us. And
Yeah.
I think what, if anything, it's helped with is they know who to call and they get the answer before they necessarily get into that position.
Yeah.
And I think that's helped a lot, yep.
I agree.
I agree as well.
Well, and this is like, the long-term planning, I'm looking forward to August when we can review all of that again. So if you have things on your, what you're thinking about, that's kind of when it comes up and we can push Sean in a direction that we want to see the board go and the system go.
I think I did, based on, just gotta find it. Oh yeah, right here, so based on, Member Elliott's
Okay.
comments at a previous meeting, MCEL is added to that, and so I'll actually pursue trying to attend that, or present at that. I think you mentioned it's in Helena this next fall.
It is in Helena, and I'd be happy to
Yeah,
help advocate to make sure that happens.
I'll definitely, try to follow up on that and get that scheduled for the fall, as long as it doesn't land, during the, potentially, if I go to the, NCTR conference, I'll just have to see what those dates are.
It is usually before that.
Is it?
Usually.
Yeah.
And then the hire one FTE communications, is that the one that was hired and has recently moved on, so
Yep, we'll get to do that one twice.
twice, right?
Yeah,
Okay, well, I
Double pay
just
for that.
wanted, I was reading and thinking that
that is the same person.
it's the same person,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
Right. Well, we're on to the board training. This is the privacy.
Is there public comment?
Oh, there is, sorry. Time for public comment. I don't know if we have anybody in the computer still.
Yes, we do. We have, two.
Do we have anybody have their hand up?
No.
All right. Just let us know if you want to comment on anything and I will remember to ask for public comment. But the next item is our board training, which is the privacy and security of personal information.
Madam Chair, members of the board, this is Jim Olizier again, the legal counsel. I will now cover the TRS policy on personal information and the notification of a breach of data security. The purpose of this policy provides TRS's goals in maintaining the privacy and security of personal information of members and beneficiaries collected by TRS for the purpose of administering the retirement system, and how a member is notified if there's a breach of that security. The definitions included within, I think, are fairly straightforward. If you have any questions, please let me know. But the key thing to understand is the type of personal information that we must protect. This is information like social security numbers, other ID numbers, bank account information, and medical information. This is laid out in state statute, and I could get into that more if you like. For the purpose of brevity, I'll refer to this personal information as PII, which stands for Personally Identifiable Information. Now onto the policy. The first part covers the privacy and security of personal information and social security numbers. The second part covers what we do in the event of a data breach. So going to part A, privacy and security of personal information and social security numbers. 1, TRS must gather and use PII on members, retirees, joint annuitants, beneficiaries, and alternate payees in order to administer the retirement system in paying and reporting benefits in compliance with state and federal tax law. TRS must also collect financial account information to make benefit payments through direct deposits and medical information to make determinations on disability applications. 2, TRS only gathers PII to the extent necessary to administer the system while complying with the law. 3, to administer the system, all TRS staff are authorized to collect and access the PII needed to perform their jobs. To the next page, 72, 4. TRS only gathers full social security numbers to initially establish the identity of a TRS member or other individuals tied to the account related to the remittance of the required contributions, the distributions of payments, or to disclose the PII to a third party by authorization of that individual. In all other circumstances, TRS will only use a truncated social security number, the last 4 digits, when that individual has already been entered into the system. 5, TRS may disclose full PII to third parties with whom TRS has contracted to help TRS administer the retirement system and to maintain records. If full PII is not needed, then only that truncated social security number will be used, or limited information as that third party contractor needs. 6, other than described in this policy, TRS will not disclose any PII to third parties unless there's express authorization from the individual or clear legal authority to do so, for example, through a power of attorney, a guardianship, or a court order. 7, anytime that TRS releases a document containing a social security number to the third party, TRS will truncate or redact that number in a manner that's appropriate with the circumstances. 8, TRS shall destroy any documents containing PII in accordance with TRS protocols. 9, TRS will not store documents or records containing PII on any portable media or devices unless it is necessary for the specific job function and only for the duration needed. If that information is stored on a portable device, it must be password protected. Practically speaking, since TRS employees use password protected virtual desktops, this should be a non-issue. 10, any third-party agents or contractors used by TRS are contractually required to have a security policy to protect the PII that TRS shares with them. And now on to the second part, Part B. What do we do in the event of a breach? Well, first, we would contact Risk Management and Tort Defense. That's the state division assigned to manage such issues, and we would reach out to any insurers. And then internally, Part B, 1, if TRS discovers a data breach, TRS will make reasonable efforts to expediently notify the affected person in writing unless law enforcement determines it's necessary to delay notification for an investigation and request this of TRS. 2, any third-party agents or contractors holding PII provided by TRS must notify TRS of the data breach in accordance with number 1. And 3, if TRS issues a notification of a data breach, it must also submit an electronic copy of that notification and the number of individuals impacted to the Attorney General's Office on Consumer Protection. No PII shall be included in this correspondence. And this brings us to the end of this policy. Please let me know if you have any questions.
I do not. Is there any public comment for our privacy policy? Okay. So at this point in the meeting, we are going to close the meeting for a disability application. All right, thank you. So it is an action item as the application for disability of Carl Strachan. And we need a motion.
Motion to approve?
Do I have a second? Dee, can you second that for us?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All right. All those in favor of the approval of the disability request indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. I don't know if I heard yours, Dee. Is there
Yes.
any? Okay, any disapprovals? Okay, motion passes. All right, this is our last opportunity for public comment. All right, then we are ahead of schedule and we'll get onto the roads early today. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
I.
Chair votes aye as well.